I ended my 2023 by playing a game called Otogi, Katsugeki, Mameda no Bakeru, Oracle, Saitarou no Sainan, exclusively for the Nintendo Switch. I'm just gonna be calling it Otogi moving forward in this review, just for the sake of my health. It's been a while since I've made a regular review on this channel, and I kinda wanna get back to that. It's one of my New Year's resolutions for this year that I'll no doubt fail on, but I would like an attempt to be made on my part at the very least. So what better way to start my journey back to that than with Otogi. Plus, it's one of the best games I've played last year, and with no English release in sight at the moment, I would really like more people to check out this title. So let's talk about it. Otogi is a game from the development team Goodfeel, most notable for Kirby's Epic Yarn and Yoshi's Woolly and Crafted World. This time, they've decided to make a 3D action platformer inspired by the Goemon games from Konami. You take control of a kid named Bakeru, a tanuki boy who has disguised himself as a human, with a sick pompadour. Let me just stop right there. For those of you that don't know, in Japanese mythology, the tanuki is a trickster. It has the ability to transform into anything it wants. Also, it has really big testicles. And for those of you wondering, no, Otogi does not feature any testicle mechanics. You go from many different provinces in Japan in your tea kettle spaceship, whacking enemies, racing enemies, shooting enemies, and engaging in giant mech battles. The platforming is pretty straightforward. Run around and bonk enemies on the head with your drumsticks. I don't know if I'd classify them as enemies, since for the most part, the enemies are just chilling or dancing along to the music and not really caring about what you've got going on. It isn't until you strike first that they become more aggressive and fight back. Speaking of the enemies, I love how the enemy designs and functions change with the environments. It reminds me of the People Monkeys from the Ape Escape series. The drumsticks are also used to move platforms and progress throughout the level. There's also very light combos you can do in the game. It's not a game that would require multiple combos, but still it would have been nice to have more, as what you start the game with is pretty much what you end with. You can also block and parry in this game, which always feels great to pull off. There's also a last second dodge to where if you dodge at the last second, it makes an enemy more vulnerable to a combo. You'll also come across other bosses that will grant you a transformation to use on your adventure. You can turn small to find little areas to explore, turn into a sumo wrestler to increase damage, a gunner with rollerblades to shoot enemies from a distance, and a fisher to attack enemies with your hook, which is very good for crowd control. I do wish there were a bit more transformations to play around with. You get all 4 of them fairly early into the game, and that's all you've got until the end. And especially since the gunner and fisher power-up more or less do the same thing, with the fisher ability being the better option as it's both a ranged attack and it doesn't just target one enemy at a time. It's more of a long-ranged whip, so you may find yourself not even really using the gunner ability, unless you just really want to change things up a bit. There's also multiple shops in the levels to buy items to add to your inventory or to increase your max health. I like the bomb that wipes out all the enemies on screen the most. It's both very effective and it's just very cool to see. Much like the games Goodfeel has developed in the past, Otogi also has Collectathon elements to it. You've got these little yellow dookie creatures scattered throughout the environments to find, with a total of 5 per level. They'll even tell you something in Japanese upon finding one. What are they saying? I don't know, but they sure are adorable. To clear the stage, you're required to find at least 3 lanterns and break them open to weaken the energy force surrounding the drum at the end of the stage that you'll constantly keep bashing to clear the level. And there are multiple lanterns in the level as well. So luckily, if you miss one, you don't have to backtrack the whole stage to find out where it is. And if you do find extra lanterns, you can just break those open and pocket the money or ability orbs that will come from them. There's also a total of 3 capsules per level to find as well, which will have little statues inside of them. Neither the capsules or the Dookie babies are required to collect, but the collector in me just couldn't not collect them. And with the capsules, there's also a display area in your ship where you can see all what you've collected throughout your journey on your shelf, which is pretty cool. Later in the game, there's even tanukis that you'll be able to find. These are a lot harder to find because, again, tanukis are tricksters. They hide themselves in plain sight. But once you see an object jittering around a little bit, just keep bashing it with your drumsticks and eventually the tanuki will reveal itself. I really like the levels in this game and just how diverse they are. You really won't find many other games like this with the types of environments that Otogi has. Everything is Japan themed. It's flashy, it's fun, and it's exciting. The level designs are all fairly standard, but it gets the job done. I was always looking forward to seeing what the next area had in store for me. I think they did a really good job here. The soundtrack is good as well. It can reuse tracks quite a bit, which is unfortunate, but I do like it nonetheless. The songs all sound appropriate to their environment, and given the theme of the game, uses instruments that are associated with this era of Japan. So even in areas like industrial areas or a beach, they still have traditional Japanese sounds to it, which helps give it its own identity. The soundtrack would be immediately recognizable to me years down the line because of this. Like I said before, Otogi also has racing sections and on-rail shooting. Both of these are pretty standard, but I really enjoyed my time doing both of these. They were a nice change of pace from the platforming. If I did have any criticisms of them, it would be that I wish there was more. Every time I saw a dog head, for context, you drive and go on-rail shooting sections in a giant robot dog head, I immediately got excited because I loved both of these missions so much. And lastly, there's Mecha combat. Mecha combat here is really good as well. So your tea kettle spaceship can turn into a mech to engage in essentially mecha boxing. Stay with me here. It feels heavy like a mech, and attacks have just the right amount of oomph to them that feels very satisfying. You also have two different special attacks you can use once you inflict enough damage on the enemy. A rapid fire punch attack if you're close, or if you're a little further away, a giant laser beam. Both you and the enemy can get knocked down, just like in regular boxing matches, and have a counter to get back up. I found that you basically have to keep fighting until the enemy blows up. I've never gotten a win otherwise, but who knows. Overall, I was very pleased with my Otogi playing experience. This game is currently a Japanese exclusive, but I could totally see this game getting announced at the next upcoming Nintendo Direct. It just seems like one of those wacky titles that Nintendo would like to push at the end of a console. But if it never does get localized, just know that it's not a game that requires you to understand Japanese to enjoy it. Sure, there's some story elements that you're going to be missing out on and maybe some fun dialogue between the other characters, but for the most part, it's completely playable for someone not familiar with the language. Sure, it's not the most polished of games. There's definitely some technical hiccups and jank when things get a little bit too crazy on screen, but I really enjoyed my time with it. Playing this game was like revisiting my childhood. It's a game that seems to have missed its boat by a couple of generations, where you would see something like this sitting next to Billy Hatcher and the Giant Egg, I Ninja, Frogger, Ape Escape 2 and 3 on store shelves, and depending on who you ask, that could be looked at as a bad thing. But I'm not one of those people. Those older B and C tier platformers were still good to have around, and in a way, were kind of unrefined in a way that was both frustrating at times, but also very charming and fun as well. If you know, you know. I'm not really gonna dive any deeper into what I mean by that. Anyways, I'm just glad Otogi exists. I miss this type of game. So whenever one reveals its little Tanuki man, Pompadour head, or whatever Battleland Wonderworld is, I'm there. Definitely check out Otogi if you're interested. I don't think you'll be disappointed. But if you are, just know that it wasn't me. It was a Tanuki pretending to be me. Pretending to be the Drewster. Thanks for watching.